How do you beat Genshin Impact? Some people might say it's completing all the archon quests, some might say you beat the game when you can fully clear endgame, and others may say having 100% exploration. There are many different factors when it comes to this, and as a game that receives constant updates every 6 weeks, one could say that the game isn't currently beatable. Say that to my video titles. But while there are so many different challenge videos that strive to beat the game, there hasn't been a single one where the aim is to lose. And with that being said, this is the Genshin Impact Death Run. Before we jump into it, I've got to explain the rules. What exactly is a death run? To put it simply, the goal of the challenge is to complete every single type of death in the game. When your whole party falls, you receive a game over screen. The run is complete once I see every type of death message. For reference, I'm using the list in the wiki here, so if there's any missing, then not my fault. Also, this is being filmed before Nodcry, which is likely to introduce at least a couple more death messages, so if you're watching after the update, they're not included. Which brings us to the second rule. What is every type? For example, if you die to 4 damage, you get the message Belted Death. But if you die to most enemies, you get the message Beware of Enemies. These are different messages. However, some enemies have different tips. I am not counting these, only the different death messages. The reason why is because after the first ever version, they just decided to not add any more customized tips to new enemies. The rest of the rules are pretty straightforward. All characters, banners, and weapons are allowed, no bug abusing, just your general challenge run rules. I'm allowed to kill characters multiple times because there's no way I'm getting that many unique characters for all of the different deaths. But with that being said, let's just jump right into the run. We start off by choosing Lumine because I always choose Aether, and we name ourselves Renova. Pretty fitting name if I do say so myself. Now we start at the beach and immediately there's already a couple of different ways where we can get our first death. But this is not the place to die. If we be a bit patient, there's a better location and a much faster way to get a bunch of deaths altogether. The one thing I made sure to do is to turn off automatic healing at the statue. This is important. As you know, if we get close to the statue while automatic healing is on, we get healed to a certain amount of HP. We can prevent this by just keeping a dedicated character to kill outside of our current party, but if the last place we teleported to right before our death was the statue, we'll automatically get healed. When we automatically revive after a death, we get sent to the last waypoint or statue that we visited, and all characters in the party get healed to about 30%. This allows us to constantly use the same character for deaths as we don't need to self-inflict so much damage to reach lethal health. Turning the statue off just makes it a little bit faster and more convenient. Now for some statues, the teleport point is outside of the range of the statue, which means we won't even get healed in the first place, but just in case, I still turned it off. But right after meeting our first statue, we've come across our first unlockable character, Amber. Now for the first few deaths, Amber is going to be our most important member. I'm sure you can all figure out why, but before we actually use her in our plan, there's one death that we need to get first, which makes the process so much easier. Mondstadt is the nation of wind, and with that comes our wind gliders. But before we get our pair of wings, I like to collect this waypoint as it's along the way. What? And without our glider, we achieve our first ever death message, Belted Death. And as I said before, we automatically got revived at 30% health, so now it's time to complete a bunch of different messages. Just before, I said Amber was crucial, and this is why. Burning Grass doesn't do that much damage right now, but it's slow enough to get us low enough so that we can die to every other cause in one hit. But Burning Grass also carries its own death message, which is Burning Plants. With this one out of the way, our third one just came right around the corner, because there's something right next to this waypoint that we can use. One of the very first quests that we get in the game is to cook a chicken mushroom skewer, and guess what we use to cook it with? A campfire. And as a campfire is a fire at a camp, obviously this must burn when we touch it, right? But isn't it made out of wood? Shouldn't it also fall under burning plants? Nope. It's technically classified as a hazard, so we get the second most common death message in the game, watch out for traps. Now this message is basically the general message for anything in the game that can kill you and also isn't an enemy, so there's a lot that you can use to get this one. Exploding barrels, flamethrowers, basically anything that isn't classified as an enemy. And speaking of enemies, the next death is also right around the corner as there are helitrails right here. Okay, yeah, I forgot we beat them up earlier, but no worries, there's another camp just up ahead, which means we've also now gotten the most common death message, Beware of Enemies. We now have 4 deaths in the bag, but there's one last one we can get right here before we continue. Mondstadt is in the middle of a big lake, and okay, you can kinda already guess where I'm going with this. Normally, if you run out of stamina while swimming, every member in your party loses a set % of health and elemental energy, but get respawned at the last safe place where you were standing. However, if you're so low such that the percent health decrease kills you, you get this death message, drowned. But after sleeping with the fishes, we finally have all of the deaths we can get at this stage of the game, so let's keep progressing through the story. And now it's everyone's favorite part of these challenge runs, watching me suffer pulling on banners. With that being said, even though having some new characters would be nice, I decided to play it safe because Noelle would actually be very useful for this run as a Claymore user. But not only did we get a Noelle, we got the one and only Boken Boy. I kinda don't need to explain how good he is, I've done so multiple times already. So onto the domains where we go ahead and complete Amber's domain normally, as we've got a ton of Pyro on our team. Pyro's domain is next, and wait a minute, there's a death message that I can get quite easily here without involving an actual death. All I need to do is leave the domain and we get the message challenge failed. You get the exact same message if everyone in your party falls within a domain, so even though I didn't die, I still thought it was acceptable. Last up was Lisa's domain, and we still do the skip here, which means Act 1 of Mondstadt is now complete. And after Act 1, the entire map now gets unlocked, which means we can go get a bunch of deaths, but hold on a second. We're gonna wait until after Act 3 to do this. The reason why is because after Act 3, we get a bunch of teleport waypoints unlocked for free, so we don't have to waste time running around to get to where we need to go. And trust me, we need to go great distances to achieve some of these deaths. But the good thing is, we now have one more death that we can get right here, right now. To do this, I killed Lisa and then revived her with an egg so that she sits at 100 HP, and then walked over here and used our charge attack. Now when Electro comes into contact with water, it lingers there for a while, much like how Pyro makes grass burn. We can take damage from this and it actually results in a unique death message. Electro-charged water bodies. And after grinding a bit, we hit AR 10, which means we can start Act 2, but we also get another 10 fates, so we do a cheeky temple in the banner, and we get a Beidou, and also C1 Bennett a little bit later down the road as well. Now this video is going to be a bit different in the sense that I'm not going to cover the Archon quests in so much depth, because unlike character only challenges, the goal for this challenge isn't dictated by the completion of Archon quests. It is essentially a regular playthrough, no difficulties, no restrictions. But this time, there are other quests along the way that you would never see in a character only run. There's a few death messages that are locked behind the completion or partial completion of world quests, so to make it a bit more interesting and so you don't have to see me complete every single Archon quest in the most regular manner ever, we're going to skip ahead past the end of Act 2 where we pull an Auroron, and even further past that where we make our way over to Dragonspine. In a regular challenge run, Dragonspine is used as a shortcut to Liyue, as the other end of the mountain puts us at the Liyue weapon domain as well as the easternmost statue of the Seven. The Frostbearing tree also gives us a bunch of XP for free, but there's another catch to this place for this challenge. As you may know, there are a few areas in Teyvat with unique terrain mechanics, and Dragonspine is one of them. These terrain mechanics may be helpful or harmful, and a few of the harmful ones come with their own death message. Dragonspine has the mechanic Sheer Cold. When you walk around for too long without a heat source, Sheer Cold builds up, and when it reaches max, you start to gradually lose health. It takes a minute and a half to actually build up, but when it does, you get the death message Sheer Cold. But this is the only message that we could get that was nearby, so after reaching AR 18 and pulling our most beloved Pain Slasher, we take down Dvalin, watch Venti get kicked in the balls, yes I had to include that, and finish Mondstadt in 3 hours, 52 minutes and 2 seconds. Now if we were to compare this to my character only runs, this would actually be in third place with a character run time of 3 hours 27, but we're not going to compare it this time. Onto the next death. We're going to be starting off with the deaths that don't require a world quest to complete, and the first one on the list is found in Sumeru. We're going to the Fontaine waypoint and backtracking through the realm of Farakit. It's a bit of a walk, but this is going to be the fastest way to get to the desert of the Hadramaveth, because what's waiting for us there is none other than the Waynuts. If I can find them, that is. I spent about 5 minutes wandering around the desert trying to find a single one, and when I did, this is what happened. Yes, that's 4, let's go! What? Yup, that's right. I got the generic non-enemy death message. Now as per the wiki, the Waynuts are supposed to give a unique death message called Master of the Sandstorms, but sometime between when the desert was added to now, they've actually removed the death message and replaced it with this. So unfortunately, we wasted about 15 minutes trying to get a death message that doesn't even exist. Bummer. But oh well, let's just move over to the next one, and we're going back to this waypoint because the next message is in Fontaine. To get this one, we're gonna have to ride on the Aquabus and make our way over to the Big Crab, because surrounding the arena there's a lot of hot water. And since Auroron desperately needs a bath, we took a nice dip and got to the next message, hot, hot, hot. The The next one is also in Fontaine, but we're gonna have to jump over to this waypoint over here. We have to walk down to the Foggy Forest path and find these contaminated bacterial mats. But these ones here don't attack you. I was so confused because I 100%ed Fontaine when it came out and forgot how these things worked. I know some of them attacked you, but I didn't know which ones and where. I tried swimming in the contaminated water, but that also didn't work. I tried attacking them, but they didn't attack back. I spent a lot of time researching it, but I couldn't find a lot online, so I just decided to come back later and head over to the next one. To get this one, we've got to teleport to this waypoint and take a deep dive underwater. We've got to make our way over to this cave over here because what awaits us is the one and only Thorny Cyst. Thankfully, this one kills us much faster than Dragonspine, and we basically go down within a couple seconds and get the next death message, dangerous creatures in the water. And that's actually most of them that we can do right now without starting world quests. Technically there is another couple, but I'd like to save them for a bit later, as even though we could go ahead and get them right now, it's so much easier to get after we start world quests required for different messages. The thing is, we've still got to grind to AR 23 in order to start Liyue Act 1. And you may be asking, why are you still completing Archon quests if they're not needed to complete the challenge? Well, there is a good reason behind it. There's a few messages that you can only get in Inazuma, and to get there, we need to reach AR 30 and also complete all of Liyue's Archon quests. The good thing, however, is that world quests still provide adventure experience, so we can use that to our advantage. Instead of running around the overworld opening chests and whatever, we can just hit two birds with one stone and get death messages while still gaining adventure experience. Straight to Natlan, where we teleport to Atokpan and start the Little One questline. I really didn't have any theme names for the guy, so I gave him the most epic name imaginable. Sigma Doodle. Okay, now Sigma Doodle and I needed to make our way over to the Falling Star Fields in order to start the Sacred Mountain questline. Our first requirement was to take down these hilichurls here, charge down this Abyss Mage, and then enter the ruins where we're greeted with a bunch of Mimiflora. The good thing about this area here is that there's grass everywhere, so we can just light it up and watch these abyssal monsters burn. Now there are a couple ways of these guys, but they're not terrible. They just take a long time to kill if anything. But after wiping them out, the volcano goes bonkers, which allows us to hitchhike a ride up to the Skyfire Circlet. Now in the Skyfire Circlet, there's actually another message you can get here that's not a part of the quest. I did do a bit of testing beforehand, because like I said before, most causes of death in the overworld will either give you beware of enemies or watch out for traps, or deaths in domains will give you challenge failed. I tested so many things, and there was only one thing that I could find that would give you a different one. For some reason, these air vents here don't give you the watch out for traps message, but instead give you the all members have fallen message. This message is what the game gives you when there's literally no other explanation to why you've died. It literally doesn't even say how you can get it on the wiki, so I had to find out myself. There's not even a tip on the screen, just the message. It's honestly a bit ominous. Ending on a big one. What's it gonna be? Okay, never mind. But let's continue making our way into the volcano, and before we meet our death here, we've got to light up the ancient sacred mountain. The first enemy we come across here is a clanker, and this thing is way too tanky for a level 37 enemy. We then manage to unlock the first area of the mountain and make our way over to the first astral assemblage. Now we can get another death message by jumping into liquid phlogiston, and it gives us melted down. We could have got it much earlier in various areas around Atokpan, but dying here doesn't set us back in the slightest as the waypoint is right next to it. Back to the quest where we use the Yomkasor ability to jump into this pool, and then try to activate the assemblage, but that doesn't work, so we're gonna have to go and charge it up. I also did this quest on release, so my bad for forgetting, but this path led nowhere and I was so confused. We had to beat up the slimes for the bots to fix the path, which led us to the top of the tree, where we immersed ourselves in hot goo and partially charged the assemblage. The next one was simple. All we needed to do was hit the blocks under the Mimiflora to unlock the next path to the goo chamber. But we were greeted with another purple guy, so burn! The last charge was unlocked by ramming into these rocks with the Tatankasaur, and that meant we could finally finish with this part of the quest. The final part of this area was just touching all of these beam things to destroy the abyssal corrosion, but I wanted to see what would happen if I died to it. And just as expected, watch out for traps. Yep, who would have guessed? And after touching the last beam, we clear the abyssal corrosion and activate the second assemblage. To get to the final assemblage, we took a spirit way to above the area, defeated these wolfhounds, and cleared this puzzle here. I don't even know if I did it correctly, but I used the Tatankasaur to get around the back and unblock the entrance to the cave. This makes these dudes carry over a block and summon a dragon idol that we can use to ride to the next island. This island has the final assemblage, but the way to unlock it is just ramming into stuff, so boom, bam, pow, bang, boosh, and that's number 3 done and dusted. Before moving to the lower layer of the mountain, I wanted to test if we could get another death message by jumping off here, but the region prevents you from falling, so that was kinda unfortunate. But here we go, onto the final part before the next message. The first thing we've got to do is clear waves of Rift Hounds, which isn't too bad. We have a decent amount of healing in our team with Bennett, so even though it was a long fight, we managed to outlast them. The thingamabob drained the phlogiston away so that we could enter this chamber. Now all we had to do was shoot this ball into the hole and jump towards the light with the Yimkasaur. When a Saurian dies or when we hop out of a Saurian, we fly upwards for a brief few moments, and since this light does a lot of damage, we get launched up into it, which gives us the well-deserved death message, incinerated by the golden light. Considering it took like an hour and a half to get here from the initial teleport to a Tokpan, this was a well-deserved mini victory for us. What better way to celebrate it than to pull an Aether? And after that fiesta, I was like, yeah, nah, screw that. No more world quests, it's Razor time. We beat up Boreas, gave the unusual Hilichurl its own death message, cleared floor 1 of the Abyss, and did a few domains which got us up to AR 23. Why do I keep on doing that? Which means it was now time to start Liyue Act 1. There's not that much that happened here. I changed out Kaya for Aether just for exploration, which means we could one-shot Cloud Retainer's domain. I also got this Ruin Hunter to fly up for the very first time, but we basically killed it before it could do anything. That marks the end of Act 1. And just so you all are aware, I've changed the team comp again. I've replaced Renova with Auroron and decided to use Aether as our main carry, because it's just a bit more fun this way. Beto works well with Aether because her burst makes us do additional electro damage on hit, and Bennett gives us increased attack. Auroron's first Ascension passive makes it so that he does off-field electro damage when Aether uses its skill, so we're swirling even more electro. I don't even have good Hydra application, so we can't make full use of their kits, but for now, this is a pretty solid team. Anyways, back to Fontaine. I was prepared to start the passive world quest, but I actually found the attacking bacterial mat close to where I first teleported in. This was exactly what I needed. All I needed to do was hit it with the squid skill thing while we were at low HP, and yeah, they removed this message as well. That sucks. But at least we found out early this time, so we can move on to the next death. The next one is locked behind a Fontaine world quest that starts right here. To start it, you have to defeat these 2 mechs, which don't really pose much of a threat. There's a bunch more mecha in a few locations that we have to defeat, as well as some simple puzzles in order to retrieve a bunch of survey anchors. Why are they all so spread out in the first place? Who the hell thought this was a good idea? But with that done, it was now time to head into the floating cubes of water. Most of it is pretty simple, apart from the fact that this Hydro Slime knocked me down a good 20 stories. Each cube has this movement thing that just brings you to the next one. And eventually we made it to the biggest cube, where like nothing happened. Oh my god, something happened. Now as you can see, some of the cubes are now different colors. We just need to go to one of them. It doesn't matter which one, just any one of them. We can't actually get them at first. However, there is a bubble puzzle which makes us go on a mini adventure, which eventually lets us dive into the cube. Now inside the cube, we get affected by a new terrain condition, Archeum Energy Flow. Once this bar reaches max, we automatically drown, which did happen, but we had too much health. So after burning ourselves down to lethal territory, we made our way back to the cube to drown once more and get another death message. Post-explosion water body. Now this one wasn't as bad as the Natlan quest, it only took about 40 minutes to achieve. We celebrate by pulling C1 Auroron and then make our way back to Liyue to continue with Act 2. There's only one other death message that we have access to right now, but I'm saving it for just a little longer.
Granny, let's sweep this place.
Okay. Yeah, nothing happened here. It took like 30 minutes to complete. We made a little trip back to Natlan to get Aether to level 50, and then did the same for Beto because the hypostasis was really the only one I could be bothered fighting. And after ascending our world quest, we did Xingqiu's quest and then Diluc's quest, which gave us enough to reach AR 28 and also start Act 3, where my internet just randomly decided to pull a sickie. Hello? Hello? If you're the least adept with a bow, why don't you give a gun a try? Yeah, that's Liyue Act 3 done. So let's go get another couple more death messages. After you finish Liyue, you gain access to a certain region known as the Chasm. Now in a regular challenge run, there's no need to access the Chasm until after Inazuma because of the Dainsif quest. During this quest, you unlock the underground mines for free, but because we're not up to there in terms of story, we have to manually unlock it by destroying the bedrock keys. This is one of the reasons why I've chosen to keep Beidou in the party, because our Claymore can destroy the Geogranum really fast. The very first key is simple. It's right there in the open and we can just shoot it down with ease. The second key requires us to place a geoconstruct right here, and then hit the glowing rock to cause a vibration that opens up a passage to get to the key. There's hardly any enemies around here, so this one is pretty chill. Along the way to the third key, we collect the statue and then actually make a detour right here, because the next thing we want to do is head into Sumeru. Now, if you guessed correctly, the only other death remaining is related to the Withering. It's much easier to get to a Withering zone from the Chasm side because most of it appears in the forest area of Sumeru. So I went over to this place and where is the Withering? It turns out that the Withering section here only appears during Act 1 of Sumeru and is a part of the Archon quest and is not an actual Withering zone. It's just a regular place. And this was troublesome because I actually didn't know where the next closest Withering zone was. I made the decision to head into Sumeru City to gain a high vantage point, but I couldn't see anything until out of the corner of my eye, I saw an area that looked a little less green to me. Unlike other death messages, to get this one, it's much better to have a full party. The Withering debuff reduces your max HP, and the only way to increase the effect is to get hit by things affected by the Withering. If I brought out one character like every other death we've done, we would die from enemies first before the Withering effect. Luckily, one of the ruin mix left this ball here, so we could just keep running into it. After getting hit 8 times, the bar finally reached maximum, and after running around for a bit longer, we finally got consumed by the Withering and our party fainted, giving us the death message, Decayed Regions. But with that complete, it was time to head back to the Chasm and finish destroying the bedrock keys. The next one was out in the open but surrounded by a few helichurls, and the one after that was this one where I failed to get the top one to work like so many times. Like what the hell, why is this one so unnecessarily annoying? The final key was also pretty straightforward, and after destroying this one, all that was left to do was jump into the hole. The screen here is pretty dark because I'm not using Lumenstone, but right here is the black mud only found in the underground mines. All we need to do for this one is to just walk on it and we take damage, which means we finally got in the next death, Mysterious Black Mud. And again, we celebrate with C2 or Roron. And with that one complete, there are now only 3 more death messages to go, but they're all in Inazuma. So let's fast forward a little bit until we get to Inazuma Act 1. Now everything in this act is pretty straightforward until we get to the transport balloon. We clear it completely fine, but then what comes next is a fatal mistake on my behalf. After completing Rito Escape Plan, we gain access to all of Inazuma, which means we can immediately leave to get the other 3 deaths. But my stupid chunkus brain thought that we had to complete Act 1 in its entirety before certain world quests were available. So that's what I did. I lost over half an hour of time for this mistake. And although it's not actually that much extra time, it's still painful knowing that I could have cut down my time by an extra 30 minutes or so. But anyway, on to the final 3. The first 2 are located at Musojin Gorge and Yashiori Island, and although it was possible to get them earlier in Act 1 on Narukami Island, it's on the way to the final death anyways. Before actually completing the deaths, I made sure to get the Statue of the Seven so that we could instantly respawn near the gorge and knock both deaths out of the way relatively quick. The first one requires jumping into this nuclear water as it damages us over time, giving the death message, Electrified Water Bodies. Now, you may remember at the very start, we also got a very similar death message. Just so you all understand, this message is different from electrocharged water bodies. The water itself is electrified here rather than applying electro to regular water. The next death is in the same place, except we're not jumping into the water this time. Instead, we get affected by Bale Thunder, which depletes our health and eventually gives us the death message, Bale Thunder. And now it's time for the final death. Our destination is Watatsumi Island, and the person we need to talk to start the quest is right here. If you don't know what the series of quests unlock, our aim is to get into Inkanomiya. To do so, we have to break 5 seals around the island, and the first one is right here. This one just makes us clear electroparticles, which we can do pretty easily with Ether. The next one is a monolith defense, which we can also do with Ether. The third one is a pretty simple puzzle where you have to make all of the statues face the center and then lock them in place with this thing. And the fourth one requires us to light up these lamps with an electrogranum. The Fatui stopped by as well, but our team is low-key busted. The final seal is like the puzzle with the statues, but every time after we complete one, there's a bunch of Hydro Mimics that we have to defeat. Our team was made for Electrocharge, so we had absolutely no problems except for the fact that they blew themselves up afterwards. Like, come on, we're the ones trying to die here, not you. The final one had 5 waves of these guys as well, like, what the helly? But now it was time for the second part of the quest. All we had to do was collect these seals. We weren't even required to beat the enemies here, we just snagged it and dipped. And after activating the altars, all that was left to do was just jump into the hole. There's a bit more work that we have to do before we can get the death message. First, we've got to get to this gate and unlock 5 seals. Again, we don't have to fight any enemies here, just unlock the seals. And the final step before completing the run is to get to this door, which opens the gate to Enkanomiya. And after burning ourselves on grass just a little bit, we make one last leap of faith before falling into the abyss. And after 19 unique death messages and 2 unobtainable ones, we complete the entire death run in 14 hours, 45 minutes and 47 seconds. This was actually such a fun challenge to complete. I enjoyed it so much. It was really different from character-only runs as it made me complete several different world quests and explore a lot more of the world than I would have done. I definitely could have saved time in quite a few places. For example, if I'd known which death messages no longer existed, and if I stopped Inazuman's Archon quest a bit early, but I'm very happy with my time right now. We're actually quite close to some of my character-only runs, which is really surprising. And speaking of character-only runs, the plans have changed. Now that we know about the upcoming banners, it looks like Lauma only will be first, and Flynn's will come next. Please, Eye of Perception, I'm begging you. Do look forward to those as I will try to complete them as soon as they release. But we're now at the end of the video, so thank you so much for watching if you made it all the way to the end. If you did enjoy the video, please make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.